What's up, everybody? It's Guubums here. For those of you who don't know who I am currently rank 1 in North America. In the past, I was rank 1 pretty much every set I've played, and I played in the Set 6 World Finals. Today, I have a coaching video where I'm coaching a Masters player. Like, most of the lessons taught are like generally econ, but if you are in like the Master to GM range, or even slightly below, you'll probably find this video to be really helpful. The ideas taught in this video are going to be transferable to your own games most likely. And I got a lot of questions in the previous coaching video about like, oh, where can I find coaching if I'm interested. I'm going to leave a link in the description below that has my Discord in it, and you can just shoot me a message there. There's going to be details in that server that'll tell you how to get coaching as well. Otherwise, you can, follow my Twitch at Guubums, my Twitter also at Guubums, and otherwise, just feel free to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you like the video as well, and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Onto the video. All right, let's get started. Just like checking on the units you buy matters a little bit.
Yep.
It's okay. So here already, looking at your items, it's probably left side. I know what this game ends up being just because of like I know it's invokers. Alright, okay. So also, like this is Magic Wand, this is Cybernetic Leech. Like I know all the icons, and this is Overcharge Metafont. The thing with this one, the reason why I think it's really good is because one, you already have JGTR. So your items for playing around Sorks is really good. It also immediately gives you a Mouse 2. It gives you a Mouse 2 and a Swain. And I don't know if you know that, by the way, just in case. Like it says gives 2 Sorks, but the 2 Sorks are always Malzahar Swain, at least like unless they change it in the future.
No,
So,
I
yeah.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not random. It doesn't give you like Ori. It can't give you Ori Swain, for example. It has to give you Malzahar Swain. So taking this with double Swain, double Cho'Gath, or sorry, double Malzahar, double Swain, double Cho'Gath is really good because it sets up your early game. But I think like going for Rot, this one's a little bit worse because oftentimes you can take this if you can commit to Invokers immediately. Most of the time, that means you already have like a Tarek Soraka or something like that, or like a Karma Soraka. Obviously, in that comp, you just need a lot of rods. This comp, it's like taking this to play Sorks is a little bit worse, just because like obviously Sorks is getting a lot of AP already, and Sorks need like only like 1 to 2 rods, whereas like Karma comp or Invokers need like 3, 4, 5 rods, right? Like they can use like up to like 3, 4, 5, 6 rods, and it doesn't matter how many rods they get. They'll be able to keep using them. Whereas that's not true for Invokers. Like you do run out of like needs for rods. Like pretty much taking this right away doesn't give you 2 item slams. Like most of the time, you're not going to slam JG Archangels. It's reasonable to do it with if you're playing Invokers, but obviously you are going to be looking for that Gunblade, and you are going to be looking for that Spark as well. So even if you take this, you're still slamming JG. So if we go by the assumption that either one of these ones that you take, you're slamming JG. Just for the record, you know what JG is, right? Like
Guild Gauntlet.
Yeah, JG. Then it's probably better to take this one just because it gives you a stronger board immediately. It gives you more direction immediately, and you can commit immediately. Also, this is generally. This augment is already a pretty good augment on all 3 augment choices on 2-1, 3-2, and 4-2. But because of like how it works specifically, it's just better on 2-1. Just because it gives you like oftentimes like people will take this to get themselves a Mouse 2 or like a Swain 1. And yeah, those are just like really strong early game units. But either way, this one's fine. Like you do have a good spot for Invokers, so it's not that bad. But like if you notice, like right now, the board you're playing is still going to be played around Sorks. Even if you choose to level this turn, which it doesn't look like you are going to. Okay, so another thing here is that like you have to hold off on these slams. So the most important, like at this point, I assume you're mentally committed to Invokers, even though you're not like completely committed. Like you can choose to pivot off anytime you want, realistically, if you get given the spot for it. But if you are if you are angling Invokers, you do really want to prioritize that Gunblade. So both of these items are very good, so long as you already have a Gunblade. But because your board's already not that strong, like you don't have any upgrades, you're not jamming level 4. It is like a good habit to slam items. That's like something that you're taught very early on, like when trying to improve at TFT. However, as you get higher in the ranks, like you're gonna notice that like knowing when not to slam items is really important, right? Like you have to know when to greed, and like this is one of those cases where it's probably better to greed, just because your board is probably not gonna be able to win anyway, and maybe you can kill an extra unit here or two. But for example, if you were able to get a Gunblade at like some point later in the game, then it's going to be really beneficial in the way that like you'll save HP like later in the game, right? Like you'll just be able to win more fights after you get to like Karma.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty. Like normally the most like talked about round is going to be 2-1, so that's why like I had that entire thing. But like pretty much like none of what you did is horrible. It's not going to like cost you that much. But like we're also talking about like we want to make sure that we're doing like stuff that's ideal, right? So like I can look at this fight and I can tell you're not going to win. You could probably look at this fight and tell yourself that you're not going to win. Wait, unless you do win. Okay, yeah. You don't win. But it's actually decently close. And slamming 1 extra item here did save you 2 HP. So we immediately see like the effects of like slamming this item. It's not useless. It's not that bad. Like I would never like crucify someone for making this play, but it is wrong probably. Like almost objectively, just if you are angling Karma, just because of how important Gunblade is. And if you want to slam either one of these, the best one is probably Jewel Gauntlet, just because Glove sucks so much. Tear can be used for Redemption. Tear can be used for Chalice. Tear can be used for Shiv. So something that people don't know about Invokers is that Shiv is actually fine. The reason why Shiv is a lot worse than Spark is because Spark is a much better early game item. And also in Sorceress, for example, another AP comp that you'll find yourself playing a lot, Spark is a lot better than Shiv just because like a lot of your damage happens at the start of the fight, whereas Invokers, a lot of your damage happens throughout the fight. And Spark almost never makes it to the backline. And Karma obviously does damage to the backliners, and shivving the backliners, it does give you a decent amount of extra damage. Keep that in mind. Like, I think JG is fine here. Like, JG, hold tier, hold rod is probably the best play. Alternatively, you can actually not slam JG, but realistically, 99% of the time it's JG. JG will probably save you, like, on average, probably 1 HP per round, meaning, like, every 2 rounds you're going to kill 1 extra unit, roughly. So it's definitely correct to slam JG no matter what with these items. And
okay, so I've got a question. If I do go the grid route, right, and I'm waiting for my Hextech, that thingy.
Yeah, Gunblade.
Yeah, Gunblade, yeah. If I'm waiting for the Gunblade and I end up in the late game with a static ship, who should it be placed on?
It's okay. Ideal is Rise, but most of the time you're going to find that it ends up on Soraka, and that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like if you're playing Azir Lux, which is I know the patch you're playing on is last patch, so Azir Lux is not in meta, but Azir Lux in the current patch is in meta. Then you just put Shiv on Azir, just because Shiv is really good on Azir. But like in Sorks, you tend not to want to have it. If you do have one for whatever reason, most of the time it's just gonna end up on Vel'Koz. So this is really good. Obviously, this you could level, you could not level. I think both choices are okay. So then, if you won your previous fight, you would level here after hitting this 100% of the time because like you actually do have a board strong enough to most likely win too. But in this case, since you lost the previous fight, it's actually reasonable to just sit around. You can like lose this fight and then get item priority. Alternatively, if you do end up winning this fight with just a level 3 board, which is not that uncommon, right? Some people are like really open. Some people are just like really weak. There's nothing you can do, and you just beat them. Then that's also fine. And I think both decisions are valid. It probably depends slightly on scouting, but for the most part, like even if you scout and like decide with no like real direction on whichever one you decide to choose, it doesn't end up mattering too much. So it seems like you choose not to level. That's okay. You win anyway. That's okay. Yeah, play strongest board here. Okay, so now here's where I would already like be thinking about long term. This Vi is not all that relevant. Like Vi is better than Renekton, but I'd probably just play Renekton and sell the Vi's because like you said, like I know in your brain you're probably angling Sorks when you slam Archangels because most of the time like if you're sorry not Sorks I meant Invokers because most of the time when you're angling Sorks you're not going to slam that Archangels. Obviously you need the tier for mana items, but obviously you don't need that for Invokers. With that in mind, that you want to keep these 2 units. The only way to make econ on this turn while still playing a reasonable board is to replace the Vi with Renekton. And yeah, Vi is slightly stronger, but 1, she's not that much stronger, and 2, Renekton 2 is easier to hit than Vi, and it's a lot less expensive. So like holding this Vi, even though you're playing strongest board, will probably cost you a little bit too much econ for it to be worth it in the long term. So it's probably just better to swap here. Alternatively, you might be forced into a position where you end up like pre-leveling or not making econ. You do ideally want to make econ here, if at all possible. Like you have to think about the ways you can make econ on this turn, and the best way to do it would in this turn would have just been to like get rid of the both of eyes. But obviously, like another way to do it, if you were angling Sorks harder, for example, would just be to get rid of the Invokers and you commit to like a Sork early mid game, and that's also fine. But like because I know when you take Magic Wand, when you slam Archangels, that you are going to end up in Invokers. Obviously, you told me it was Invokers as well, but like when I see you holding these 2 units, when I see you take this Augment, when I see you slam these items, I can make that prediction, and you can make that prediction too. Like if you're watching a different player, so yeah. Here, Spark, I mean, this is pretty much a no-brainer. It's Spark, it also gives you a really strong board because you can play the Rek'Sai for 3 Void, 2 Bruiser, so it's really strong. Taking this Cho'Gath for, let's say this didn't exist, taking this Cho'Gath, taking that Sunfire are both really good. Obviously that Sunfire gives you a Karma, which is something you should be happy about. But taking this Cho'Gath, even though it's 1 gold, upgrades your Cho'Gath when you're on a streak, right? If you take this Cho'Gath, what you could probably do is slam a blue buff and just start angling Sorks. I know like mentally you want to play Invokers. You still have to like look for spots that like sometimes you can pivot, right? For example, like if you had, I know you didn't pre-level, but say you pre-leveled and you found a Lux in your next shop, then you're definitely going to want to have this. I mean, that's just like one example of like something you can do. But obviously the Cho'Gath 2 spikes you immediately as well. Obviously this Rek'Sai, like nobody's denying that this Rek'Sai is the best thing you can get. So we're moving past that, but like let's say Rek'Sai just didn't exist. So yeah, this blue buff would be really good. And then you can just like angle back into Sorks, and that's just like one option that you can go with. So it's just like people will look at this and be like, oh, it's 1 cost, I don't want to take it. Yeah, it is 1 cost, but because it makes your board stronger, which obviously makes you more likely to win the next couple rounds, then you make that gold back by winning rounds. And obviously,
yeah, that makes sense.
So here you probably just level. It's correct to level now. You can just sell the buy. I mean, and then what are we leveling for? Probably just Soraka, the strongest. Let's see if you level here. Yep. Okay, Piltover. it's not worth it. I mean, 3 Void, you can't do this while on a... This is not worth it. I mean, you're really strong if you play Rek'Sai, right? You're really, really strong if you play Rek'Sai. Like, Void is really good. Piltover, I mean, you're getting 1 gold per turn. But the thing is, you're also losing 1 gold per turn to play it because you lose econ. And if you so happen to lose your round, which I don't think you will against this guy, like, pretty much, like, you get 1 gold per turn here. We both agree with that, right? Like, a gold will literally pop out. But then you're literally, like, instead of being at 10 gold, you're at 4 gold because you could have just sold both those Vi's. You already sold 1 Vi. But you could have sold the other Vi and the Echo just to make extra Malzahar, just to make 10, right? And then...
Yeah, I was probably mentally jumping between those two lines, right? Thinking, should I just try to get Piltover rolling and stick with sorcerers for a while, then stick another Void in, or just go the strongest board? I couldn't decide. That was a really last-minute decision.
Yeah. It's better to play strongest board here just because you are really strong and you can win all these rounds. So, like, this is almost a loss, right? Like, if you lost this fight, I mean, it's not that close. Honestly, you're pretty... you're definitely stronger, but you all, mind you, you are like, you're getting 1 gold per turn by playing Piltover, but you're also losing 1 gold per turn, so you're not neutral. And also, I mean, you're just playing a weaker board, which risks losing you the fight, which obviously, like, that's not an option that you really want to, like, you don't want that to happen. That's kind of what I'm saying. Also, now it's like doubly wrong because now that you have Cho'Gath 2, you'd much rather have the Spark on a Cho'Gath 2 over a Vi 1, right? Not only just playing not strongest board, you're playing like significantly not strongest board, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense.
Rek'Sai 2. I mean, it's still take up Piltover. This is pretty bad, but it's fine. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm not gonna talk about the same thing too much. So here it's probably this. I mean, you just don't need EXP. Okay, this is an instant reroll. Yeah, this is a really bad augment, and that you should never ever take almost under any circumstance, unless you're getting like triple Aurelion Soul is like the only situation where you'd ever take this. This augment, I know you already have Jewel Gauntlet, but it still busts up the rest of your team, and it's still like a good augment. It's not the best with Jewel Gauntlet, but it's not the worst either. So this is gonna be better than like probably 90% of the choices you're offered. So you should be looking really heavily on that one. And then now, okay, so now we're in a spot that like none of these are good, right? Tiniest Titans, when you're at 98 HP is very bad for obvious reasons. It's also really bad on 3-2, even if you're at low HP, for obvious reasons. Like, you get a lot more value if you're getting this on 2-1 because the 2 gold snowballs really quickly. Obviously, the HP, say you lose like fights early on, you start regenerating a lot faster. But yeah, probably need to level here. Once again, I don't want to like keep bringing up the same thing, but Piltover really needs to go. I mean, at this point, you can play a 2 Invoker as well. Soraka 2 is obviously really strong. Like, when you're on a win streak, you should be just thinking about, like, how can I play strongest board? Unless you're very deliberately taking out strongest board because you know you're going to lose and you want to make econ. Like, that's probably the only other scenario where you wouldn't be playing strongest board, right?
Yeah, I end up in the middle of 2 good decisions, right? Whenever I'm just like, not lose streaking, but also not playing strongest board. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, moving past this. Obviously, there's no point to say it every time. So now it's a Gunblade, so we get Gunblade anyway, which is good. So here, as a general rule of thumb, you don't want to be jamming level 7 on 3-5, even on a win streak, if you're dropping like from 30 to 10. It's just like a little bit too expensive. Sometimes it's worth it if you're 100% certain that it makes the fight difference on your next 3 fights. So like, to do that, you'd have to scout. Then it is worth it. It's goal neutral or goal positive long term. But ideally, you win without leveling, and 2, this is still a weaker board than if you were just take out Piltover, right? Piltover is giving you 1 gold a turn, but you just lost 3 gold a turn to play Bruiser when you could just take out Piltover and you would just be stronger, right? So in general, like, you, as much as you can, you want to stay above either 20 or 30 here. 20 is like if you're being a little bit more aggressive, but for the most part, like the quote-unquote like free-ish level, it's not completely free, but like the no-brainer level is when you level above 30, and like the very, very no-brainer level is when you level above like 40 or... I mean, it's very rare cases 50, but yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. I was actually trying to win streak, but keep the Piltover gold. That was the goal. But yeah, it makes sense. I lost 3 gold for that 1 gold.
Yeah. It's just Piltover win streak tends to be pretty weak, right? Just in general. Like, in the past, if you played older sets, you'll know that there was Underground win streak and like certain other, like Merc win streak, which was actually like better than it is now. Or like even Astral win streak, which is a different econ trait, kind of applies. There's probably just sell buy here. Yeah,
I went for Redemption, yeah.
Gauntlet's fine as well.
I usually, when I play Invokers, I don't really know what to do with the bows.
Titans and Giant Slayer are probably Titans, Giant Slayer, and Shiv are your 3 best bets.
Yeah.
ZZ Rod or ZZ Rod is like not that good. It's okay. It's fine. You can slide. You can build it, but it's not the best. It's really good in Sorks though. It's less good in Invokers. So here, the first two definitely get rerolled. It's probably okay. So pretty much like in these spots, like since you've already generated so much value out of your out of your win streak, you do want to like prepare for late game. And late game, the best augments are always going to be combat augments.
Yeah.
So like social distancing is fine, but it's actually worse off in this comp just because you do want to clump your front line together, especially with Redemption, especially with Tarek. So social distancing is okay. I would reroll these two, and if they were bad, I would take social distancing. But I know you reroll social distancing into a good augment, which is long distance pals. Like this is pretty good already, just to take. You buff up like this, and then eventually you'll be buffing up Ari, and obviously that's just like a really good thing to do, right? And you don't need items, so that's why like Forge would be really bad. Like you're pretty much already full on items. You're missing like maybe one or two tank items, which you should be going for off this carousel. So
What I
much,
was thinking here is I can probably go all the way to level 9 instead of rolling at 8.
okay, that's also reasonable. Yeah, that's reasonable. But then in which case, then you should probably just sell off your entire bench. I just assumed that you were already like that's actually somewhat reasonable because especially because your middle augment allows you to do that. I still think it's probably not the best. Probably at the higher levels of plays, it's definitely not the best. But you are a little bit too poor. If you're 50 gold here, which you're close to 50 gold, but pretty much like piloted differently, you could be at like 60, 70 gold here just because of like all the gold you lost throughout the game. And yeah, like these units on your bench have already eaten up like probably 10 to 15 gold. And I understand why you held them. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. They should have been held, quote unquote, on your board so that like pretty much they're the way like I put it is they're taking up equity on your bench, but they're not providing you with anything, right? So the best way for them to provide with you with something is either to one, sell it to make econ, or two, to put it on your board so that like they actually like start providing value. These units have not provided value for you the entire game, even though you've lost econ for them since the beginning of the game. And it worked out well because since you're win streaking, it masks the amount of gold you've lost, because like you are really quite rich, especially now that you've taken another econ augment, but you are really quite rich, so it's masked like almost the effect of how much these units have lost you in terms of econ. Just in general, you want to be thinking about like what's the best way to get like value out of the units on my bench. Sometimes the value is like, okay, I will be playing them later, so for example, if you're holding a pair, it's like eventually you get value by it makes it onto your board and makes you stronger. Obviously you can get value by selling it. You can also get value by playing it immediately and like.
This is actually usually my hardest stage. Stage 4 is where I usually end up bleeding a lot.
Yeah, I think it's probably like you should probably be a little bit more willing to roll. I know you're on a win streak. I know you're very healthy. Like I think in your spot specifically, you probably don't have to roll just because like if you were to play some of your invokers, you'd be stronger than your bruiser board. Like if you took out Piltovers, you would also be stronger. But in most cases, even if you're ahead, even if you're win streaking, you should be considering rolling, and you should be considering like when you do roll, like what are you looking for, right? And in your case, obviously like one Shen makes you a lot stronger, two karmas would make you a lot stronger, and like you might think, oh, it's better to roll on 8, and like and probably in this game it is better to roll on 8. But the thing is, I think taking the econ augment was wrong, unless you are able to actually make it to 9, like with reasonably high gold. But that's not something you would know without like being able to scout, without like understanding stuff like that. For example, like even just losing this fight at the start of the fight because like your mouse are going one shot is probably like pretty detrimental. You're going to lose a lot of HP here, which can be pretty detrimental to being able to go 9. Once again, you are still losing 1 gold a turn on your bench, so like that adds up over the course of the entire game. Here, just taking any sort of defensive setup is really good. Is there Shen? No, there's no Shen. Probably just Chain Cloak is the best. At this point, taking Sword Cloak, I can understand it somewhat because like you're going for Giant Slayer, unless you are playing for Belveth already. If you're playing strictly for Belveth Ari, which is also reasonable, then you can slam like BT here maybe and then go for RC. But like slamming Giant Slayer on an Ori on a 2 at this point in the game is not going to do that much. So I'd probably just be like, if you are committed to going 9, then it's probably better to just greet here, just because like that item slam is just not providing you enough value. This Ori on a 2 is not strong enough, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I will. Items is just one Monster Claw. Maybe Morello if you want anti-heal. It's probably not double Zephyr. You haven't scouted. Like I'm gonna be honest, you haven't scouted the entire game, and I don't think you're gonna start now. So just like going defensive items tends to be really good in general. Like it's not something you have to be afraid of. Like I understand the value of Zephyr. If you want to go one Zephyr and then build Morello, I think that's also reasonable. You do need anti-heal, but if you're gonna play for Heimerdinger at some point anyway, then you probably don't need anti-heal as much. Also, like, notice how if you're sacking to 9, like, it does look like it will work out for you here, but, okay, when you go fast line like this, you generally don't want to be doing it with low gold. It's just better to do it with, like, 1 gold. Also, your strongest board is to play around invokers and not Like Oriana 2, Lux 2, or Lux 1 are weaker than Karma 2, and even you could still be playing Lux, but like just playing Karma over Oriana is going to be important. And just play Tarek, get off the 4 Bruiser, get off Piltover. Like a lot of these are pretty much your entire board is in like some way, like there's a problem with some parts of every parts of your board, right? You're too stuck to like not transitioning, I guess, in a way. I understand like wanting to stick around the early mid game units just because it's a lot easier to play around those. But you do have to think about like, okay, how can I be stronger at like every stage in the game, right? Part of like the complexity or like part of the challenge of playing strongest board is that like every turn you get offered a shop, every turn your board can change, and you have to think about like where should it change, right? And now it looks like you're going to get baited, quote unquote, into cashing out this Piltover. Obviously, I know the answer is that you are going to cash out, so it's probably going to work out in your favor. But this is a problem that you created for yourself by like playing Piltover to begin with, right? Like you don't need this cash out to win the game. Realistically, you could be playing a stronger board for like 10 extra rounds, honestly, at this point. But especially on the lose streak, it's getting like a little bit. Pretty much, your spot was really good for like a top 2. But in an unlucky scenario, you could very easily end up going like 5th here. Oftentimes, like maybe probably not 6th. It's probably a little bit too high roll for 6th. But oftentimes you can actually go 5th. Even 4th would probably be disappointing with how the game like played out so far, right?
Yeah.
So just
I agree.
Yeah, just be like a little bit careful with like reading this Piltover cash out. I understand like why you'd want to do it, but the thing is like in your state of the game, like you just don't need it to win. Most of the time, like you can just play differently and still manage to win. And now, okay, so we spent a lot of money on this Heimerdinger, which I think is probably fine enough, but it's not the best just because like we do need to start hitting other stuff. This Oriana needs to go for Tarek. It's just sorry, I forgot it's still Piltover. Okay, that makes sense why you didn't take it out. Okay. Like once again piles on to like the reason why Piltover is bad, and we luck out by fighting this guy who has one of the weakest boards I've ever seen. He has Urgot 1, Zeri 1, level 7. So
yeah, what the force.
Yeah, I mean, you should have never in a million years been able to cash out. I won't lie, but obviously now that we have cashed out, we can just transition to like some type of Ari board, some type of 6 board is also reasonable. Scion's probably not worth taking out. Just drop Freljord is probably better. Items wise, okay, so this is one of those cases where like items wise, like there's probably a best way to do it, but once again, we should probably not be taking Zephyrs.
I don't usually do that. That's actually pretty funny. I think I end up with 4 Zephyrs actually.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I mean, normal like Zephyr's fine. Zephyr's like a good item. Generally, you don't want to have like more than 2. Like 2 is probably enough. The best item was probably Archangel, but like realistically, what's more important was that you slammed the items during the round. So because you slammed it afterwards, I criticize it. But like if you slammed Giant Slayer during the round, I wouldn't criticize it. You should probably save one of these for a Zephyr cheese. It's just better. Like just get like one round. Like I understand like not wanting to Zephyr cheese 3 because like even I wouldn't be able to do 3 probably in a turn, and I play this game too much. So like it's hard to expect people to be able to do a 3 like 4 Zephyr cheese. Like you can't do that. But you should probably Zephyr cheese like at least 1 to 2. Is reasonable to ask for. I mean, yeah, this is like the correct board to play probably. It's interesting that like you didn't go for like the level 9 board, the standard level 9 board. I think most people would, and I think it's fine too. But I think playing your 6 Invoker board is actually also really smart just because you already had all the units, right? It's like a board that you already have rather than a board you have to transition into. So it is like quite reasonable to play the board that you did. You are going to be able to win the game with this board, like I'm almost certain of it. You could have slightly better items on Ari. Because you don't have AP on Ari, either Archangels or like you couldn't put Death Cap on her, I understand that. Because you already had Death Cap on Karma. But Archangels would be better just because like you do want some raw AP. She's missing a little bit of it, so Archangel's probably slightly better. Giant Slayer on Ari specifically tends to be like a little bit weaker. It's still very, very good. Very, very, very good. Best on slot even. But it's like slightly weaker than, for example, a Lux, because a Lux will always be hitting frontline. Whereas part of the strength of Ari is that when she ults, backliners are dying, right? Like her third ult starts killing off backliners. So Giant Slayer is like slightly weaker than it otherwise can be. Just keep that in mind a little bit, I guess. Like for example, actually Giant Slayer does work on this unit, but like that's because it's a 3-star. I didn't realize it was a 3-star, but I was gonna say Giant Slayer didn't apply on that unit, but Archangels would. So. But yeah, I mean Giant Slayer is fine. Once again, the most important thing was that you got your items on in time. But because you took the time to like have a break turn anyway, then you might as well have gone like look to get like the best items possible, right? I mean at this point the game's over. Your board is disgustingly strong. Yeah, you will beat these 2 people without like any problems. But like even in a game where you went first, right? Like there are a lot of things you could have done to like make it a little bit less dicey. Like pretty much had you not cashed out your Piltover when you did, you might have greeted it too long and you might have lost the next 2 rounds as a result, right? For example.
Yeah, I locked out. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And like
And
maybe, and the thing is like maybe even if you didn't look out, you would still go second. But this is one of those games where like if you went second, if you went third here, you're leaving a lot of OP on the table, right? Because if you go third here, I imagine you gain something like 14 OP. I mean that's 30 OP is a lot, right? I can tell you right now, as someone like who plays a lot, like I play 20 games, and in 20 games I gain like 100 LP on a really good run. That's 5 LP per game. So when you're losing 38 LP, that means like over a course of 20 games, you're losing like 6 games worth of LP, if that makes sense.